So fractions, decimals, and percents are just different ways of writing the same information. So it's kind of like if I were to write my first name. Okay, this is my first name. Okay. Is it a different name if I write it in cursive? No. Same name, just a different way of writing it. Just the same as writing fractions, decimals, and percents is the same information, just written in a different way. Okay, does that make sense? Anybody still need this one? So same as the blank. Okay? So we are going to talk about converting all of these. Really, we're only going to be concerned about fractions to decimals right now. We'll get to percents later, but I want you to see how it all fits together. Okay? Now, there are some of these steps that I would never go directly. Okay? So I'm going to start with those ones. I would never go from a fraction to a percent directly because it is so much harder than going from a fraction to a decimal and then to a percent. Okay? But it is possible to do it in one step. So to go from a fraction to a percent, here's how you're going to do it. You're going to create a proportion with a fraction equal to the number x over 100. And we haven't talked about proportions yet. We're going to get there in like December and January. But that is one that I would never do. I would never go from a fraction to a percent. Because for me, it's easier to change that fraction to a decimal and then change from a decimal to a percent. Okay? Next one is a percent to a fraction. Again, I would never go directly. If I wanted a percent and if I needed a fraction and I had a percent, I would take my percent to a decimal and then the decimal to a fraction. But if you wanted to do it in one step, you can remove the percent sign and put the number over 100 and then simplify. Okay, that is much harder to me than going the other direction, even though it's 2 steps instead of 1. Okay? Going from percents to decimals is super easy. Okay? So to go from a percent to a decimal, you're going to take off the percent sign. So you just take off that percent sign and move the decimal point 2 spots to the left. Okay? So that should be like a reminder, right? To go from a decimal to a percent is super easy as well. You're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right and then add a percent. Okay? So these 4 steps right here, if you're not feeling like super confident right now about it, that's fine. We're going to focus on fractions and decimals and fractions. And our calculator will do most of the hard work for us. Okay? So to go from a fraction to a decimal, you're going to do the numerator divided by the denominator. Yeah?
Would you essentially just be solving the fraction?
No, because solving the fraction doesn't really make sense in terms of math. You're just rewriting it as a decimal. Solving generally means like you're solving for something unknown. In a fraction, there's nothing unknown. It's just written differently. Okay? So then from a decimal to a fraction, this seems super confusing, but again, our calculators are going to do it for us. So if you wanted to do it by hand, you would remove the decimal, then you'd put the numbers over their place value in a fraction, and then simplify. Okay? So what that means is if you had like 0.25, that goes to the hundredths place. So you would put it over 100 and simplify. If you had 0.137, that goes to the thousandths place. So you'd put it over 1,000 and simplify. That's super confusing. Our calculators do it for us. Okay?